Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar for the Florida Master Gardener Volunteers for September 2024. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we are pre-recording this webinar. As ironic as it is, we have a hurricane bearing down in the Gulf. And ironically, we're going to be talking about plants and hurricanes today. But we are pre-recording this so we can all be safe and watch this from perhaps a different location if necessary, or when it's more convenient for us to watch it a little bit later, as opposed to doing a live webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and speak with you. Normally we have an activated question, and my question is, what is your least favorite hurricane? And my least favorite hurricane is Hurricane Andrew. Stephen Brown, what's your least favorite hurricane?
That would be Hurricane Ian in 2022.
Okay, I figured that you were going to say that. Becky, do you have a least favorite hurricane?
I might say Debbie, just because it was probably the most severe one I've been through, which is not saying much about me, but
Okay, all right. So we have different levels. That's great. I did want to remind you that we are still having the Master Gardener State Conference October 20th through 23rd. We've had a great registration, and there is still time to register. So if you were considering going to the conference this year, we would love to have you. It's going to be groovy. We're getting groovy with gardening. And our presenter today is Stephen Brown. Stephen Brown has been the Lee County Horticulture Agent for over 30 years, so he's a treasure to us. He's a faculty member, of course, at the University of Florida, IFAS. He provides horticulture education for commercial landscapers, HOAs, and residents. And he is a well-known presence on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with the Lee County Horticulture page. And if you don't follow those pages, Stephen does fantastic short videos where you can learn so much from him. So I would encourage you to follow him on Instagram. He's also an avid photographer of plants and landscapes. He has a master's of science in soil fertility and plant nutrition from UF, and just a wealth of experience with subtropical and tropical plants. So we are so thrilled to have you, Stephen. You're an amazing resource for us at University of Florida IFAS, and I don't know what we would do without you, and I'm afraid that we're going to have to find out if you ever retire. I'm not going to let you do it, but I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, you'll find out pretty soon, I'm sure.
Oh, no. Okay, Stephen, welcome to the webinar, and I invite you to go ahead and share your screen. All right, if you'll go ahead and introduce your topic, and I will mute myself, and you're off and running. Thank you, Stephen, for being here.
Okay, thanks for stopping by, everyone. This topic today is on hurricane survivors. What made it through the storms? And a lot of things going on. So let's get started. Okay, we do have a statement, and this is equal opportunity statement, and UF, of course, follows that. Let me go through the list of topics I'll be going through today. We're going to be doing Hurricane Ian, wind, water, and sediment. And the reason I'm going to be highlighting Hurricane Ian, because that is a storm, despite going through 5, 6, or 7 different hurricanes since I've been here. That's the one that had the greatest impact. And so I did a lot of observation through and after that storm. Then we're going to go through typical tree losses following hurricanes and doing hurricanes. Let's do some palm assessments afterwards. We're going to look at best and worst landscape plants. We're looking at shrubs, ground cover, wind resistance, and surge resistance. And best surviving tree list. I'm going to then show you our best native plant list and best non-native plant list. So September 28th, 2022, Hurricane Ian hit. And you can see right here, the bullseye was headed basically for Lee and Collier County, and it did not disappoint us. Other hurricanes in the past, you see Michael, Irma, and Wilma. And of course, we get spring storm and everything else. And they sometimes have a lot of wind impact. Typically, after a hurricane, we see this. This is basically wind and rain damage. You can see the lens of this Tababula is being torn apart, and the street here is flooded. But this is typical of any storm. With Hurricane Ian, we had a surge, and in many places, the surge water came in as much as 11 feet up to the second stories of some houses and some condos. The thing about this surge, as you can see, it left many of the beaches barren, stripped them of foliage, vegetation. It didn't last long. I was told by many residents within 2 or 3 or 4 hours, the water had receded, but you can see the damage left by that surge. The surge deposited lots of sediments from out of the Gulf. This is an example in Sanibel where the surge was pretty big. This is a roadside pile of surge material. Here in Fort Myers Beach on 20th of December, they collected, actually on the beaches and elsewhere, lots of surge piles that I call sediment mountains. And you can see that material right there, that kind of gray colored material. That's all material that washed in from the surge from the Gulf. And a little later on in this presentation, we'll look at some of the nutrient content of the surge itself. Hurricane tree loss depends on what? The species of the tree, age, health, and structure. Also, conditions during the hurricane, such as precipitation and time, it takes for the hurricane to move through the area. Of course, characteristics such as soil conditions and your urban forest conditions, such as the overall tree canopy. So six things that can happen to trees and palms during a hurricane. Number one, you get leaf loss. Here you see a couple of gumbo limbos, very typical of gumbo limbos and many other trees to sustain lots of foliage loss. Broken branches, we're looking at right there is a sea grape tree. And then we're looking at, I believe this is a, I'm not sure what tree that is, but it could have been a Tababua tree that we're looking at right there. And a couple of Washingtonians, lots of leaning palms after the hurricane. And you see an uprooted oak right there. And a couple of slash pines that later died after the hurricane events. So let's look at some loss of some of the leaves or all of the leaves. We have 2 royal palms there. This is typical of royal palm. Royal palm will try not to lose all of their leaves, but in almost all cases, if you get a moderately severe hurricane, the royal palm's leaves will be stripped. And what you're looking at it is right there. These 2 palms, by the way, if you see a royal palm like this, they will survive. The gumbo limbo on Fort Myers Beach, that survived. So let's take a look at some royals and some coconut palm. This is the 30th of September. This is just 2 days after the hurricane. And if you look at, we have 5 prominent coconut palms in this picture. So let's go and look at it several months later, or actually about a year later. And you see for many of the palms, very typical, they will recover within a year. If you look at the royals there and the coconut, 1 coconut was lost, but it too recovered. Generally for palms and many trees, within a year, you will almost have the landscape going back to normal. But a lot of things can happen. And within a hurricane, lots of plants can die. So again, leaf loss. This is July 2021. This is a This is a tree that I've been photographing for many years. These live oaks were very small when I started to photograph, but this is about a year before the hurricane. This is after a couple of weeks after the hurricane. And essentially, they had fully recovered about a year following the hurricane. This is a tree. This is the West Indian mahogany. And take a look at it right here. You will see broken limbs. This is very typical after a hurricane. And broken limbs are very common on West Indian mahogany and also gumbo limbo and several other natives. My guess is that the tree will disassociate or will lose branches, but is able to quickly refoliate. As you can see right there, this is 16 days after the hurricane, and we're having good leaf refoliation. So little photosynthesis was lost if you really think about it. Continuing with broken branches, this is about a year and a half before the hurricane. This is a yellow trumpet tree, commonly planted in South Florida. Right after the hurricane, you can see the damage that happened on these. So these are broken branches. And you can see what happens here. This is about a year or so later, and it has regained its foliage, but the tree is shaped differently. The thing about these trees, if their branches are broken like this, my experience, and it depends on the tree, that after several years, many of these trees will begin to rot because the broken branches did not properly heal. I think, though, in the case of many tababoas, as you can see on the picture on the right, it might be difficult to see that their healing process, despite being ripped apart, is pretty good. And here is strangler fig. This is our native Ficus aurea. And a couple of days after the storm, you can see what it looked like. Let's follow it along. November 2022. You can see not long after the storm, like 50 days after the storm, it's healing itself. The tree has begun to put out a lot of new growth. Really spectacular. Take a look at this right here. This is 7 months later, so the tree is healing itself. So if we look at it 12 days after Ian, 12 months after Ian, it's tremendous the amount of foliage these trees put out. It is almost like you're pruning a hedge. And so you prune, or the hurricane has pruned the tree, and the response is to generate a lot of foliage. It is nothing like it looked before. And number 3, the main stem breaks. This happens where these trees are usually old, they're rotted from the inside, they have internal injuries, and this does happen a lot with mahoganies. It does happen a lot with oak trees, including laurel oaks and live oaks, and many large trees that have aged. So you can see what happened after the storms right there. We're looking at live and laurel oaks, and they were completely torn apart. Now, the tree might continue to live, but it might be wise to remove these trees. And again, main stem is broken. We're looking at a yellow trumpet, 7th of October, a few days, a week after the storm. There it is, 16th of October. Look how fast that is. This is within a year, but still the tree essentially has recovered within a year and probably will bloom in October 2024, easily so. And if you take a closer look at the what happens, you can see that the wood is broken, but where the bark is good, you can see new growth emerging in the area of the bark. That's a lot of foliage within a year. And I wanted to show this Royal Poinciana tree here, that on the 15th of November, a couple of weeks after the storm, I want you to take a look at what it looked like then. You can see they're cleaning up the debris right there. and the tree is pretty much in shambles. If you look, you can see it has a large rot in in the trunk itself. There's a big hollow there. This is a year later, and then this is a couple of weeks ago. I took this picture. You can see the recovery there. So a lot of these trees, when they do lose leaves and they do lose limbs, it tends to give the tree a good pruning and a good, so to speak, reflush of new leaves within a year or two. And we're looking at main stem break. This happened on some palms. You can see the cabbage palm here. And usually when this happens for palms, there's usually a disease that's associated with the palm. And for the royal palm, and it does happen quite a lot with Washingtonian, the stem itself will break. The wind actually breaks the stem. And as I said, you will see this commonly with Washingtonians in some areas. So this is main stem break. And then you have the leaves. A lot of trees or palm leaves, you can again see here a Washingtonian palms leaning and a couple of queen palms. When this happens, I would say remove these palms. There's no sense trying to stabilize them and put them back up. Of course, if it's a valuable palm, yes, you can try that. But for the most part, these palms were removed and things continue as they were. I don't think they put in any new palms after this. Number 5, uproots. Look at how many royal palm topple. And there's a couple of reasons why trees and palms may fall. Number 1 is insufficient growing space. Look at those royals. If I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are at least 10 royals almost in a line, a row that fell. And all of them had healthy fronds. So it wasn't because the palms or the trees looked sick while they fell, but it was because there wasn't sufficient growing space. These trees or palms were kind of blocked in by sidewalks and by the asphalt on the roadway. And you can see another example here. This is in some cases where there are large trees by waterways, they tend to topple over. And again, just as in the example with the royal palms, you can see that this live oak has toppled over, insufficient growing space, soil depth may not have been deep enough, and you can see that this tree, both trees have toppled over. Now, some trees, just by their very nature, they're uprooted because of the species they are. And I think we all know that one of the big ones is the Australian pine. There, in this particular picture, the one to the left, I think there were about 5 Australian pines that were growing almost like a barrier. This is on Sanibel, and you can see the huge root ball that is left after they topple. They basically have no tap roots. On one of these trees, and actually on a couple of these trees, the root ball diameter is as much as 20 feet across. Now, these are trees that may be 50 or 30, 40, or 50 feet tall easily, but they easily topple over. Another tree that often topple over, if they're young, is the golden cassia. And with these particular trees, you can just stand those trees back up, stake it, and they should survive after the storm. So these are examples of uprooted trees, either by not enough growing space in the soil or species intolerant. And finally, no immediate visible effect. And usually this happens with palms and with pines. Slash pine, for example, you can have a hurricane or even a strong storm that passed through. And when you look at it after the hurricane, immediately after, they look fine. But what happens within 6 months to a couple of years, and usually can't take that long, the tree was kind of wrenched internally. It looked good right after the storm, but they slowly begin to decline over the months and over the next couple of years. When they do, you tend to get a lot of beetles that would invade the tissue and cause a rapid decline of these trees, and also in some cases palms. So again, no immediate visible effect, pretty common slash pine. And by the way, this doesn't have to happen in a manicured landscape. This also happens in natural areas. This is very typical of slash pine reaction after a storm in natural and landscape areas. So let's assess some palms as far as their survivability is concerned. And what these hurricanes gives us is an opportunity to simultaneously compare the effect of the hurricane on different species of palm. You can see we have a bunch of palms here, foxtail, and I'm presuming this picture is about a year after the hurricane because I can see the recovery. We have queen, we have Eureka, and to the right, we have a Canary Island. What else do we have? We have a couple of Christmas palms, several Christmas palms, and I think you know the ones to the furthest right, those are royal palms. Now, I'm going to tell you, the number one most susceptible palm to hurricane, to strong wind, is that one in the center. That's the typical reaction. There are many of these palm dying, and that palm, those are the Bismarck palm. Very, very intolerant of strong winds. And if we go through a list, the 3 least resistant non-native palms, again, Bismarck, this is another location. Look at that Washington, look at that Christmas, look at that Piggy. And there are the palms in the background. And look at that Bismarck, no top, lost it all, and it will not recover. The second one I would say, as far as being intolerant of strong wind, is the queen palm. And this is about almost a year later, and they tend to have the crown tilting in one direction. Here's another example. There you see that? And this particular palm right here is trying to regrow. And this is kind of typical of queen and some others where the crown not being tilted, they try to regrow and they have boron deficiency. And I think what happened is the meristem has been damaged so badly that it's not able to pull up enough boron. Deficiency symptoms occur. So what is the next palm as far as least wind resistance? And we have it here. This is a foxtail palm. And usually with foxtail, the old fronds tend to hang down toward the trunk. You can see an example here. In this case, also the crown shaft have been broken. If the crown shaft is broken, you might want to cut below where the break is so that you free up the new growth to emerge. Because if you keep it like this, chances are that foxtail will not recover. And I want to show you this example. These are coconut palms, about a month or so after the hurricane. Again, typical reactions of coconut palms. You can see the old fronds that are leaning, but what is it doing? It's blocking the new growth from emerging. So what should you do? Well, if you don't have to remove the green leaves that are not blocking the palm, you don't have to do that. But many landscapers, they will come through and they will remove all of the leaves. Now, look at that. We're going from late September when we had the storm to mid-December. They removed all the leaves and you get new growth. One thing you got to realize, all of these palms and plants and shrubs and everything else, their greatest desire is to keep on going, keep on living. So if you can even assist them in doing this, let's do it as much as possible. But in this case, you can see they've removed all the leaves, the new growth are sprouting that quickly. They're fast. Now, This is the worst surge-resistant non-native palm that I've seen. And let's take a look at the picture. I want you to look at that Cuban laurel tree. And I will rate the Cuban laurel as one of the most sensitive hurricane tree that there is in the landscape. If it doesn't topple, the bark appears to be so thin that these large trees, and they can be very large trees, do not survive well after a hurricane. You see on the same street on Sanibel that the cabbage palms are recovering. This is almost 9 months after the hurricane or so. And look at the areca palm. The surge went through this area. Look at that soil. You can see that gray matter. That's still sediment deposit right there. And they do not do well. Areca's palm, these are clumping palms that don't do well with regards to surge. Remember that massive wall of water coming in from the Gulf, 11 feet or so, it will make anything buckle. And here you see some of the HOAs have tried to recover their areca palm, but these are dead. And how do I know they're dead? Because arecas are always trying to put out new growth. And if you don't see any new sprouts, chances are the whole clump is dead. So this is remarkable that a clumping palm can be killed by surge. Let's take another look at another site, and you can see the royals have survived, the cabbage have survived, but the arecas, they're all dead. I think that's fascinating. They're all gone. Now, non-native plant assessments, we're continuing this, and this is on Fort Myers Beach, 13th of December, same year as the hurricane. Look at the royal palms to the left. You can see the leaves have been stripped. Those will recover. The queen palm may or may not recover. And the cabbage palms, it's almost off frame right there. You can see them, that they're a little worse for wear than even this palm. What is this palm? Let's look. Pygmy date. Pygmy date is one of the most hurricane-resistant palms. It's even more hurricane-resistant than some of our native, including the cabbage palms. Just look at that. And here is my list of the best wind-resistant non-native palm species. We have pygmy date, and this is native to Southeast Asia. It's a slow-growing palm. We have the Christmas palm. I would put that as the second most hurricane-tolerant palm. These are native to the Philippines. Bottle palm, pretty good. They're pretty tough. And spindle palm. Bottle and spindle palms are closely related. They're pretty hurricane tolerant, surge tolerant, wind and surge tolerance. And I'm going to rate the coconut palm as the best surge resistant non-native palm. So this is 2022, 2 months after the hurricane. You can see where the surge, look at it, it broke up all those pavement, those concrete. That's what the water did. And you can see the coconut palms are still standing. Mind you, in a lot of other cases that we've seen before, a lot of the coconut palm, the leaves will flop down, as we saw in at least one case previously. But these did not. But you'll notice only one palm is missing from this line of palm. That's the second one to the right. You can see the stump is still remaining. But all the others did pretty well during this hurricane. They tolerated the storm despite the fact that the surge broke up concrete pavers on right there on the beach. So this is a testimony to the highly salt and drought tolerant coconut palms and surge tolerant. So native palm assessment, let's go through what I thought were the best native palm that will tolerate a storm. Number one, we have the cabbage palm. Now, this was taken in an area of strong surge, I mean massive surge. You'll see one palm that has toppled and one that is still remaining standing. And you can tell there's been a massive surge here because the root balls are exposed on the surviving palm. So this is a native palm. It fairly well. It's a good palm to have to resist hurricane. Number two, I'm going to say the Florida thatch palm. And this is after the storm. They don't look too bad. I don't remember how many months after the storm I took this, but they seem to be recovering quite well. This is a great slender trunk palm. You may want to consider that. And then we have the Keith thatch palm. It's native to the Florida Keys, high salt and drought tolerance. And royal palm. The royal palm, as I said, the canopy is not hurricane resistant. And this is, I think, yeah, September 2022, I took this picture. So it's really right after the hurricane. But let's move forward to a year later and look how well this has recovered. Isn't that remarkable? This is a year later, and it looks, if you drove down the street, you have no idea that we went through a Category 4 or 5 storm. The Royals have recovered. So I think the Royals, on purpose, they will lose their fronds as a defensive mechanism, because why hang on to it when within a year, I'm going to have brand new foliage, brand new photosynthetic organs. Everything will be great. So I don't think they worried much about losing their canopy, losing their leaves, because I would say easily recovered. And I see this reaction from Royals, storms after storms after storms.
Hey, Stephen, could you go back to that last slide? Can I see the before and, yeah, I wanted to see the before and after on that. And that's the same street. That's
That is the
amazing.
exact same street. And in this slide, I went out last week and redid the picture. See it right there?
Yep, I see it.
That's it.
Yeah, what an amazing change.
Yeah, amazing
Okay.
recovery. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, that's them right there. Now, let's talk a little bit about the best surge survival, best surge resistant native palm. And I'm going to say it's the green and silver saw palmetto. So this is an East Coast picture before any storm that would have occurred. But let's take a look at what happened after Hurricane Matthew. That's it right there. So this is Flagler County, and 1 month after Hurricane Matthew. But if you look carefully, you can see new growth is already appearing. And if we take a look at the new growth, right out of that sand, you can see new growth. Now, what you got to remember about saw palmetto is that it has underground trunks or underground stems. So those weren't damaged. And so from that, more new growth emerges. It just forces its way out from that surge effect, from it being covered over by a lot of sediments. So I think it's remarkable too. It needs a little bit more greening up, but it's going to hit some sunlight, and that's what's going to happen. And the second most surge resistant palm, I think, is the cabbage palm. We're looking at Sanibel 1 month after the hurricane. And although they're lean and you can see where the water came in and it came out, a lot of roots are exposed, I still am going to rank that good surge resistant and good wind resistant. Now, what I want you all to look at is the other plants in this group of plants. There is a wild tamarind already putting out great new foliage. That's a month or so. Remember that those West Indian mahogany that you saw? that was already refoliating within a month or two after the Hurricane Ian. That's also what's happening with these wild tanagers. So refoliation is pretty quick with these species. And I didn't mention the Perotas or the needle palm because I have very little experience with those after a hurricane. So our best and worst plants, let's go through this list. This is a couple of months after the hurricane or so, 3 months or so. And we have Cuban laurel. That's a dead tree. They really don't recover when they're being stripped that much. Green buttonwood, excellent. Cabbage palm was a rough storm. Sea grape, and you can see that's coming back. Let's look at this again on Sanibel 2022. And a lot of these communities, if you look at that roadway, it's basically being cleaned up. They want to clean up as soon as possible because they don't want any reminder. So let's take a look at the trees and shrubs along this roadway. Cocoa plum, dead. Cuban laurel, dead. Dwarf schifferia, some new sprouting. And by the way, some of the cocoa plum too, there might be some new growth, but for the most part, you may want to take out that hedgerow for the most part. Green buttonwood looks good as tree and as a, let's call it a shrub to the right. And sea grape as trees, and let's call it a shrub to the right, quickly recover. And cabbage palm, they do really well. In this case, they were pretty strong during and following the storm. And again, I want to emphasize that a palm or tree or shrub might look good sometime a couple of weeks following the storm, but they may still decline afterwards. So keep your eyes out what's really surviving. Just want to show you another shot of the cocoa plum right there. This is in a place called Punta Rasa, right on the causeway going towards Sanibel. And if you take a look at the red tip cocoa plum, completely fried. And I want to show you green buttonwood, and look how well it held up. There's a plumeria to the left, and that plumeria in general seem to have done pretty well during the storm. The clusia, which is commonly planted now, didn't do well, but some of them, many of them did recover. Silver buttonwood, and I want to tell you in this case that the green buttonwood here, I did speak to the homeowner, and she told me, like a Jen, no problem, they survive. So the green buttonwood and the silver buttonwood are really strong plants doing surges and wings. We take another look here, we see the cocoa plum. Surprisingly, hibiscus did well. And then we have saw palmetto, did very well. And again, let's take a look. You see the Eureka palms there. Those are probably dying back. This is December 2022, 3 months after the storm. We're looking at green buttonwood. It's coming back. Norfolk Island pine. Many of them, Norfolk Island pine, the trunks were broken, leaves were ripped off, or the Norfolk Island fell to the ground. They were uprooted. And again, the plant to the bottom right is a hibiscus. You notice how, and those are the leaves to the right. You notice how flush and green those leaves are? I think I may have an explanation for that. And the hibiscus standards, they didn't do well. Those are like small trees. The shrubs are recovering. The dwarf ixora got fried. And the orange bird of paradise, they did pretty well during the storm. So hibiscus shrub had a greater survival rate than the standard. And re-sprouted hibiscus shrub appear to have benefited from the deposit left by the surge. So if you take a look at the St. Augustine grass there, they don't look too bad. And I just wanted to show you this. best and worst again, we're looking at pygmy dates, we're looking at hibiscus, green island hedge, and this is also often used as a ground cover. Dwarf ixora, of course, this is coconut, and we're looking at aretha. And I just want to show you a little bit about the podocarpus and what happened in this case. On one side, it was pretty good. On another side, it was pretty bad. And I think what happened here is depended how the surge hit this particular location of this particular image. And again, non-native shrubs, I want to say the clusia did not do well. You can see the surge didn't uproot it, but in other cases, the surge and the wind to the picture to the right did uproot the clusia. Now the clusia, this plant, you've all seen it, especially if you live in South Florida. This is the most widely planted hedge material. It has overtaken the native cocoa palm. But however, it has poor wind tolerance and poor surge tolerance. And many of these plants had to be taken out. So that's the clusia, and you can see really what happened there.
Hey, Stephen, not
Yes.
to interrupt you, but I am interrupting you. The green island, is that the ficus microcarpa?
Yeah.
And then that looked like it did pretty well as far as a
Right.
hedge.
I'm going to
Okay.
show you that it did do pretty well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The next couple of slides. So if you take a look right there, you can see it does have its problem, the clusia, and it has other problems. But let's still stick with this hurricane here. And this is 2 shots of the same location. The silver buttonwood that you see to the left is the same as to the right. And you can see that it actually did better than the cabbage palms. The cabbage palm did well here in this location. And it did better than the foxtail, typical foxtail look. See that? There's another foxtail to the right, right? And Perotis in the back. Perotis is the native palm. And I think Christmas did pretty good. Look how that looked like it didn't even go through a surge or a wind. And of course, silver buttonwood did very well. Look at that right there. And we're looking again at the best native shrubs. This is the Florida privet or wild olive. They grow to 10 to 20 feet, and mostly you see it as a small shrub. And if you when you do see it, it's pretty densely foliated. It's great for screening. It's highly drought and salt tolerant. And this is on Fort Myers Beach. You can, I think this is within a month or two after the hurricane, and a lot of surge. And by the way, the surge was so strong on Fort Myers Beach that it actually washed away homes and carried them into the water. And it happened in this area of these royal palms you see in the background, and there's Florida privet you see in the foreground. And so these are intensely strong storms, and this little plant, I don't know how big it is, maybe no more than 10 feet, withstood that and was bouncing back really soon after the hurricane. You can take a look at the leaves to the right. It's a great plant, great for native habitats. Birds love the fruits. The fruits are really great looking. They're dark blue, purple, and nice looking berries. Now the best native shrub would be the Simpson stopper. We often see this as a small tree. These are pictures taken in Sanibel. This is not long after the storm, November 2022. And while I'm showing you one picture, that is not my total assessment of any species that I'm showing you. Because along any of these areas, while you see one tree or one palm or one shrub or one ground cover, there are others that I can do an assessment and make a judgment as to how strong, how tolerant these species are of what just happened. So this is one of several Simpson stopper that I saw and data assessment off. Now, they grow into a small tree, but you can easily keep them into a shrub or hedges, and they're beautiful hedges, densely foliated, and they have, I think they're flowering, they're producing berries right now as I'm speaking. Really nice looking. So let me put the Simpson stopper up there. Great plant, hurricane resistant. And can you believe this? This is necklace pot. We have one growing in our Florida garden, and that plant doesn't look strong. But look at it right there in this landscape. It actually outdid the mangroves in the background. You can see, I think those are cocoa plums that are close to the lanai, where the lanai screen has been torn. So this shrub has this kind of loose canopy. It's evergreen, but it's highly salt and drought tolerant, and it's a great candidate for beach planting. Look at the leaves to the shrub on the left. These are new leaves. It's recovering really well. So let's put the necklace pot into this list as a great native plant for hurricane tolerant plants. So here I am now at the best surge resistant native shrubs. Remember we spoke about the Florida wild olive? Well, it's right there. And that growth, and it's growing almost on the beach to the left. I think that's Fort Myers Beach long before the hurricane. But that growth you see that the wild olive has this kind of well, not quite pyramidal, but if you look at it, it's really dense. That's its natural growth. And again, those are the berries of the fruit. Another plant that really did well is the big cedar tree or shrub, and surge head on until they took, and they really survived well. So we're looking at the bay cedar here. It's a great plant for native. It also makes a really small tree, but you're better off growing it as a shrub. Christmas berries, they did well. I saw them got really whacked, and Christmas berries, bay cedar, they'll grow right on the, almost on the dune, almost, not quite. But this Christmas berry is inland, and I noticed quite a lot of plants right there on the sand, and they did pretty well. Now, inkberry, you see down there on the left, bottom left, did really well. This plant is right there on the dune. It's right there growing with seals. You can see seals mixed in with this one right here. And, oh, excuse me, I missed showing you the berries from the Christmas berries. Beautiful. Okay, let's get back to the inkberry, and recovers really well. Great plant. Now, we already spoke about the necklace pot, and growing, I think it will tolerate any storm surge very well. You can see it growing close to the beach here. And one thing you may want to grow it for is also for the flowers. Look at this right here. The necklace pot flowers, when it does bloom, it is spectacular. So you might want to consider this as a flowering shrub. And of course, Spanish bayonet also tolerated this whole nest really well. Goes right on the coastline, up against everything, and you can see mixed in with that. Look like some beach sunflowers right there, some other plants. So this is a tough plant. So the Spanish bayonet is a good surge tolerant plant. So here I have 6 great surge tolerant plants. You choose which one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 you want. Plant them all. So let's take a look at best non-native ground covers. 28th of December, 3 months after the storm. We're looking at the juniper, parsonide juniper right there. Star jasmine didn't do well. Ficus green island did pretty good. Kunti, excellent ground cover. Crinum lilies, a little tattered, but they're good. They're good. Dwarf Schifferia, not so good. And pygmy day palm, pretty good. Okay, so we have quite a bit of ground cover here to do a comparison. And normally, if there is no surge, you will notice that plants that grow low to the ground will survive well, normally. The thing with Hurricane Eden is we had this massive surge. So it tested the plants in two ways. Are you wind resistant and are you surge resistant? Now, surge resistant is quite often not on our list of what makes a plant hurricane tolerant. I think we need to put this on the list, being surge resistant, because we're going to get more and more surges coming in inland. And so remember that if you're planting, just don't consider the wind, consider the massive movement of water coming in on land from the Gulf and from the Atlantic Ocean, as you saw with the saw palmetto coming in after Hurricane Matthew. And Green Island and Green Gem, but really Green Island ficus. There are not many more plantings of Green Gem. If you see one of these ficus growing low at the ground cover, it is 99% of Green Island ficus. Fort Myers Beach, look at that. Everything basically got scourged away around it. And on Sanibel, this is not long after the hurricane surge area. And you can see, look how beautiful those leaves shine after the hurricane. So these are related to that big tree. Remember that big tree that didn't do well? During and after the storm, they tend to die. But it's cultivar, known as Green Island, that's really essentially the same genes. Of course, there's some difference with the DNA, but low growing, they're great survivors. And of course, the junipers. Now, in reviewing this, as I was reviewing for this class, I did notice in some of my pictures that there were some junipers that didn't do well in some location. So I want to point this out. Everything depends on location in many cases. So 3-4 blocks away, something that did great essentially under the same traumatic experience, 3-4 blocks away may not be as well as in other locations. So keep that in mind. Again, look at that hibiscus coming back. Hibiscus did fairly well. Best native ground cover, we have some foxtail fern, they did okay. We have looked at the kunti right there, and there I think we had some crotons. You can see them in the background towards the, I think that's a black olive tree to the left and to the right. And the black olives actually, speaking of trees, they got stripped, but they bounced back with new foliage pretty quick. And the plants closest toward the building, I think, were also cocoa plants, so they didn't fare well. And ideal kunti growing. And I think even if the kunti had died because of the surge or anything else, remember, they grow underground, a storage organ called the caudex, and the caudex will allow it to regrow. So even if all of this was all blacked out because of the surge, not because of the way surge hit the smaller plants, it would have come back because of the underground storage organ. And these plants, golden creeper, are found in dunes and beaches. Part of this got scorched, but even where it got scorched, new growths were coming out. So this is an excellent plant for dry, sandy, rocky location, great for parking lot. The picture to the right, you can see some of the sediment from the surge still hanging onto the leaves. Don't want to move away. So the best surge-resistant ground cover, I'm going to put the Green Island ficus as #1, but it's all very closely tied, or maybe tied with #1 to the kunti that you see there. So that picture of that kunti you're looking at now, that is a couple of weeks after a surge. You can see another plant at the top right of that picture. That's not doing as well. but Kuntis are great. Ficus green island, great. Golden creepers are great. They grow naturally in the beach, and junipers are great survival plants. Now, I did look at the sediment, and I want you guys to take a look at what's in the sediment. And we're going to compare that to fill material. Fill is basically what they put roads and houses on. It's a lot of calcareous material. And I took many sample of fill material 10, 15, 20 years ago over time and accumulated some of what's in fill material. But you can see the sediment pH on the average, and I think I took about 60 sediment soil samples from Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, Fort Myers, Pine Island. But you can see the pH is pretty high. That's the material coming off the Gulf of Mexico. Phosphorus is 7, 356 for the fill. Potassium, pretty low. But if you look at the range of potassium, let's go to that chart figure below. You can see that the good range for potassium, where it's all good, is between 36 to 60 parts per million. But we have 38 in the sediment. If you go to the magnesium, you see that fill material is pretty high in magnesium, 634 parts per million, and the sediment is 55. A good range is between 20 and 30. So the sediment, believe it or not, was adding a lot of, wasn't just bland, it was adding nutrients to the landscape and not overdoing it as the fill material does. By the way, native soil, which I didn't include here, native soil, the pH would be pretty acidic in most parts of South Florida, and the potassium and magnesium would be low. But let's go back up to the sediment material. We can see that the iron content is 15 in the fill material is 1. So that iron is actually higher than iron that you would find in most bag of fertilizer. So that is my summation that perhaps what happened is for the hibiscus and other plants that are growing, the sediment actually brought to the soil micronutrients, nutrients that the hibiscus and other plants can easily assimilate. And I did look at the sodium, chlorine right there, and the electrical conductivity measuring salinity was pretty low even for the sediment, so there wasn't really a salt problem. Best pioneer plants, and this is what I want to finish up with. There's so many new plants that come up out of the ground after surges. The beach have been wiped clean, and all of a sudden, bang. Can't go through all of them, but one that I will tell you, Cliffic, the seaside goldenrod. These things just come up. There are other things that are just periwinkles would come up on beaches. Some invasive do come up as well. It's not all good stuff that will come up. So these plants are not competing with invasive right on the beach, but a lot of stuff come up. You see gray nickerbean, which is the native that is just popping up. Railroad vine. Railroad vine and beach sunflowers are growing half a mile from beaches. They're just popping up on Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, and Pine Island. They're just popping up basically all over the place. It looks as if they were washed ashore. And then I have an unknown sunflower right there. You can see, look at that right there. It's just coming up right there. And this is December 2022. These are pioneer plants. The bay cedar isn't, the golden creeper, I wouldn't say is, but the beach sunflower and the salvias are just coming up in places where they were not planted. So they're growing back. And you can see beach sunflower there on Fort Myers Beach. I call those pioneer plants. Look at those clumps as if seeds were deposited and they're just coming up. Look at that certain material right there. Salvias were coming up. Who planted those salvias? I have no idea. Look at that right there. Beautiful. And real quick, I got 3 more things to go through. The broadleaf trees that did best, I thought these were quick sprouting trees, natives, buttonwoods, green and silver, gumbo limbo, lignum vitae, mahogany, sea grape, stranglefield, and wild tamarind. Non-native, you saw the raw ponciana, black olive, jacaranda, the trumpet tree, and Hong Kong orchid. Remember, that's a sterile flowering tree. And the best native plants, I'm going to say tree shrubs or hedges, the buttonwoods, the sea grapes, the bay cedar, cinnabar, coral bean, Simpson stoppers, and I could go on and on. This is the short list, can't do better. The palm, saw palmetto, remember that was surge proof in many cases, wind proof. The cabbages, the Florida thatch palm, the key thatch, and the royal palm. Shrubs, Christmas berry, Florida wild olive, inkberry, excellent, next up, necklace buck, my surprise great, Spanish bayonet does great, groundcover, kunti, golden creeper, inkberry, pioneer plants, beet sunflower, blue porter weed, seaside goldenrod, sea oxide daisy, and lots of salads. Best non-native, we're looking at screw pine, jethropa. I threw the screw pine in because on the beach, I saw several screw pine that looked fairly good. Some were pretty tattered, but for what they went through, they looked good. Believe it or not, the small jethropa tree, which we grow down here in South Florida, as small kind of flowering tree, they did well. What kind of shrubs did good? Some of the proteins. Exora mora grant. This is a flowering shrub, look excellent. And I wasn't the only one that made a comment about the Exora. Others have, how they look. The hibiscus, Kinsego, orange bird, sandback jasmine, some of them, and crinums, I've seen them in good places. They look good. Hedges, podocarpus, and one hedge that did not look good, by the way, was the ficus hedge, ficus microcopper hedges. They didn't look good. And also hedges from the wheat and figs, they didn't look good. Ground covers that look good, Green Island ficus, and the junipers, and the outstanding palms for non-native. Best of shows were Pygmy Day, Christmas, bottle, and the spindle palm. Okay, I think that's the end of my presentation. I do want to invite you guys, if you want to see some, as Wendy already mentioned, some of my Instagram posts. All you got to do is subscribe to Lee_UF IFAS, and I'll see you there coming soon.
Good. Stephen's fantastic. Just the before and afters, and I know everybody is thinking, okay, here's all this destruction, and there's Stephen out there taking pictures of all the plants. But
No, I stay indoors until the destruction is past.
okay. But just the before, afters, durings were just, this is such amazing information to share with the master gardeners, and I really like the way you broke it out into native versus non-native, and just pretty fascinating about the palms. And sometimes I think about the sail effect, SAIL, and I think those big broad leaves of the Bismarckia are not doing it any favors as the wind moves through there. And then
because the Bismarckia wants to hold on to its foliage, right, to its frond. The royal say, hey, I'm going to shed 1 year, as you saw, time and time again, I'm going to be back stronger than ever. So I'd rather be a royal than a Bismarck.
right. And if you had to be a royal or a coconut, which one would you pick between those?
I still go for a royal.
Okay.
And the reason is, I'm like a lizard. I can lose a tail and I like it back.
Yeah. Definitely.
And remember, with lots of coconut, the leaves fall over the growing point, the meristem, and smothers new growth. With the royal, that doesn't happen.
So, how do you think it's pretty important to get up there and remove those fronds away from the meristem if possible and
Yeah,
safe?
if you can, and I know they're pretty tall, if you can, you should remove them.
Mhm.
Sooner or later, they may force their way out,
Yeah,
but the new growth, it will look more unhealthy because
yeah,
it had to work harder to get out.
right,
And in
right.
some cases, they will die. They will not recover because there's just too much stuff preventing new growth from emerging.
Right. And, it's been my experience, and you echoed this about the pine trees, they look like they made it, and then 6, 10, 12 months later, they're going downhill from damage. And sometimes I think that they get, rocked in their
Yeah,
roots, broken up, and then that brings but they put out the stress alert, and then the beetles come, and there she goes, right?
yeah. When I inspect the pine trees afterwards, one thing I do notice, you notice sap, the gum coming out of the bark of the tree, indicating the exit holes of the beetles. And to the ground, you'll see the fine sawdust that has accumulated around the trunk of the tree. As they push their way out, they deposit those fine droppings from the wood to the ground. Yeah, so the weevils or the beetles will get in there and will cause damage. And I think too, the same thing has happened to the Bismarck when they get really damaged. Sometimes the palmetto weevil will move into the streets. So quite
Uh-huh. Yeah.
often, what you ought to do is to treat with a fungicide, with an insecticide, especially for the Bismarck and the Washingtonians and some other badly damaged palm. And
So you're recommending doing maybe like a systemic soil drench
yeah, exactly.
to keep those larvae out of there that will
Yeah,
come to a
yeah.
stressed plant.
And also to try to help the bud recover.
Mhm.
But again, there is no guarantee. You can do all the insecticide and fungicidal treatment. If it's going, it's going to go.
Well, Stephen, I mean, some people choose not to treat because that's their choice, but
Yes.
when we're talking about a $10,000 replacement for some of these, I can see the financial reasons why you would try to do a soil drench to try to put in some insecticide, fungicide to help this plant along. Hey, Stephen, were you surprised that the cocoa plum didn't do well?
I was surprised. And I tell you what, cocoa plum that we were looking at were basically the one used as hedges, such as the
Yeah.
red tip. That's a number one. But I want to call it a study of the horizontal cocoa plum, which is a different cultivar which grows along the coast. Okay.
Mhm.
And I was kind of tracking some horizontal on the Fort Myers beach where that heavy surge, and I did this years before. And I went back looking at the horizontal, which is the type they say will roast to the ground. It makes a great ground cover in many cases. I
Mhm.
went back and I was so disappointed that
Hmm.
even the horizontal got fried.
Wow.
Got fried. There were wild olives growing there. There were sea grapes growing there. There were sea oats growing there, and they all were coming back, but not even.
Not Not our favorite little cocoa plum. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So, Stephen, what do you think are some of the best things you can do as you're, facing a storm? Like we are expecting Hurricane Helene here in just a few hours, which is why we recorded this session early. But I know I went out this morning, removed all my hanging baskets, anything that was loose, put away all my, lawn furniture, that sort of thing, secured that. And I had a palm frond hanging on a wire, so I had Totally Hot Boyfriend knock that off with a rake this morning. But what are some of the things that you're doing to prepare, Stephen?
Um, to to prepare, I think you got to be prepared emotionally. If the hurricane is strong, that you may lose some of these plants. And just like if you had a frost or cold weather, wait to see what survives. Wait until new growth before you start clipping. Um, before you start clipping that stuff off. And remember, these plants are so resilient that really for the most part, within 4, 5, 6 months, you're gonna say, what hurricane, what storm?
Right,
It-
right. And
And often when your house might sustain the most damage, not
yes,
your landscape, and your landscape is easily recoverable. And I think these plants are great.
Yeah.
They teach us how to survive.
they do. They do. All right, that's a great ending point. Everyone, please follow Lee UF IFAS Instagram so you can watch Stephen's videos to come. And then please, everyone, take this survey following. Stephen's got some great quiz questions for you. Stephen Brown, thank you so much and good luck with this storm. And everyone be safe out there.
You too. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, friend. Bye-bye.